Hey, Keith and Gustavo over at Seriously Strong Training. Today we're going to show you how to do sumo deadlifts from blocks. We use the blocks when we're doing sumo deadlifts as a teaching tool, right? Because typically the lower you get in one of these positions, in a deadlift, the harder it's going to be for you to do the movement because, your joints are going to be pushed a little bit more to their end range of motion. And so when we start with the blocks, when you're learning the movement, it allows us to get you started into a little bit of an easier position where you're going to be a little stronger. You're going to have a better time learning how to do the movement. We've got a setup over here on 8 inches worth of blocks. That's a good starting point for probably most people, and that's going to put the bar just below the bottom of the kneecap, right here where that little bony part is that sticks out, the shin. And that starting height, I would say that it's always better to start too high than too low. It's also really convenient if you can take yourself down at an inch or two at a time when you're learning how to do this progression. If you're someone who is exceptionally tall or exceptionally short, you're going to need to adjust the block height to account for that. If you're someone who has, phenomenal control over your body and you've got great flexibility and mobility, you can probably get away with starting lower. If you're someone who, you're a little tighter, that kind of stuff, you're going to want to start higher. But again, just err on the side of starting higher because you can always work your way down pretty quickly. So anyways, we started here with our 8-inch blocks, 4 on each side. They're 2-inch blocks. We also have these blocks set up really wide because we're doing sumos, right? And you're going to want to get a nice wide stance with these. You got to make sure the blocks are not going to impede that. So we've got it set up wide. We've got it at 8 inches. Gustavo's going to go ahead and get into a great, sumo starting position here, and we're going to show you what it looks like. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what makes a great sumo deadlift or how to set up for that right now. That's for another video. What we're focusing on here is using the blocks, how we use them, and mainly why we use them. So at this position here, he's able to get into really good thoracic extension, right? So he's got that nice concave position here in the back. His shoulders are down and back. His lats are engaged. You should feel a lot of tension right here, right at the back of the armpit if you're doing a great setup. His knees are nice and wide. His feet are nice and wide. Butt is out, and then Gustavo is just going to take it nice and slow, bring it up to that finished position, right? So he's only got, maybe 10, 12 inches here of travel. It's great because it allows him to be in the position that he's most strong in, the position that he's most likely to be able to be in a good deadlift setup. Again, as far as shoulders being down and back, nice and arched, shoulders and lats engaged, knees nice and wide. And so when I'm using this as a teaching tool, when we're using these blocks as a teaching tool, I'm looking for those things first. I'm not looking for how much weight we're doing. We're not looking for, how big of a range of motion is. It's, can we just do a small part of the exercise with good form, with good technique? And if so, we're going to move down a little bit lower. And as we're seeing here, Gustavo's looking great. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take a pause, Gustavo. Let's take one of these blocks off each side. And then we're going to get back into our setup here. As we get lower, if you're doing this at home, as you're getting lower, you're going to notice every little bit lower is going to be a little tougher to get into a good starting position. Don't rush this. There's no reward for getting down to the ground faster. The reward is having great technique. And using these blocks, working your way down to the ground slowly is how you're going to learn how to do it and do it really well. Every single person that we teach how to do deadlifts, whether it's sumo or otherwise, we do this with. We take our time, so please take your time. This is a phenomenal way to learn the movement because, again, it takes you from this standing position that's really easy to be in, and every little bit lower that you are, it's going to be a little harder, a little harder, a little harder. So when you're working your way down on this progression, you're going to work down until you find that position where you're like, okay, this is about as low as I can go and still maintain a good arched back, knees nice and wide. I still feel strong. I'm not feeling it too much in my low back. And work there until you feel that maybe you can go lower and still maintain great technique. Let's go ahead and hit a few more, Gustavo. He's keeping the bar really close to him the whole time. Really important here. And again, he's a great deadlifter, so he's got great technique. Make sure that your technique, your form is looking a lot like this when you're doing this movement. And again, one more time, I'm going to reiterate it. Take your time. Start high, work your way down slowly. It's going to pay off because you don't want to be in a position 6 months down the road where your technique isn't quite right, or you put yourself into a position where maybe you can get injured because you didn't nail the technique the first time around. You know, this should take a few deadlift sessions. You know, again, if you're someone who's a little tighter or you're new to the gym, it's going to pay dividends slowing this process down. So give it a shot. Do some sumo deadlifts from the blocks. If you're lucky enough to have blocks like this, great. Sometimes you can take some plates in the gym and stack them up and use those. Just be careful, make sure it's not going to roll off of those for you when you're practicing.